In this video, we're going to take a look at our weapon selection logic. And in our main blueprint first-person character, here we have a list of dedicated events to each weapon. And we have dedicated keys set for each event. So whenever the key for select fists is pressed, we call select fists event. That is right next to it. We need this separation here because we need these events called during next and previous weapon logics. So when the event starts, we are checking first the weapon will fire set to 1 and if we're still alive. Then we check our weapon selected, our currently selected weapon. So if in case of the fists, if weapon selected is already set to 0, then we shouldn't do anything. So it basically checks if you're trying to select the same weapon that you already have selected. So in this case, we shouldn't really do anything. And in case it is false, then we continue with the logic. And then we have this holster animations part. So we need first to play an appropriate holster animation for each weapon. So every time we try to select any of the weapons, we need to check which weapon is currently selected, and based on that, play the appropriate animation. And here, there is a switch on integer. Our weapon selected is connected, and based on the value, we will play an appropriate animation. So if weapon selected currently is set to 3, for example, this is our shotgun. So it will play the animation for the shotgun and the arms, of course. There's here I have an event for this which is needed during when we die. We simply need to call the animations to call the holster animation. And by the way, if you want a different animation for when you die, you can disconnect this and make or just copy this, and apply different sets of animations for that. Okay, so next we set weapon will fire to 0. As always, delay that covers the length of holstering animation. Then we set our weapon selected to the appropriate value. So 0 for the fists, 1 for the hammer, 2 for the pistol, and so on. And next, each of the weapons goes to this part of the logic where we first make everything invisible. So first we make all of our weapons here invisible. Then we will set the one that we need visible. And after that, we set capsule size to a different value. Here, for our minigun, this is the only exception, the only weapon that changes it. In the end, we change our capsule size because otherwise we make it a little bit bigger because otherwise our barrel goes through the walls. And unfortunately, there's no way to simply add an additional collision sphere. And the only way to prevent this seems to be this, just making our capsule size a bit bigger. So when we select the minigun, we kind of become a bit fatter and a bit easier to hit. So every time we select a weapon, we have to set our capsule size to its default value. Here, the value are specified. If you want to change if you want to experiment with the size of the capsule component without worrying about this, you can, at the event begin play, you can make a variable and set the variable for the initial size of the capsule component. Get it, get size. You can use unscaled capsule size, and from here you can set a variable 1 and 2 and set the initial capsule's out radius and our half height, and then you promote and then you use those variables, you connect them here. This way, even if you change the size of your capsule during experimentation, this will always go back to the initial state. Next, we set visibility for the arms. We have to make them visible because when we select fists, we make them invisible since we need our arms separate, and because we are calling animation separately for both of the arms. So this is the only weapon that needs our arms hidden actually. So, and because of that, here we have to set it to visible. After that, we remove all of the UIs for our weapons from the viewport. So on event begin play, here, one of the things that we do, we create all of the ammo widgets and promote them to variables. So the variable for ammo UI becomes this, and for the shotgun, and so on. However, we are not adding them to viewport. They're only created and they set the value for the corresponding variable, so that this variable can then be called here. So basically the variable that we're doing here, just to make this clear, so we are setting this, we are promoting this to variable, so getting this variable, this for example, pistol ammo UI, basically just to have a reference there. So it's the same as dragging a line from here to here. So not to do that, we have this variable in this particular case. So we remove all of the UIs, and after we've done that, next, with the exception of the arms, we don't need to do that for the arms, but for the, since our fists got their own model for the arms, but for the rest of the weapons we have to change their location to match the location of our weapon. So in order to have the possibility to adjust the position of each weapon, we have this part. Here we get the relative transformation of the weapon, which is hammer, pistol, and so on. Right? We get its relative transformation. And we set the relative transformation of our arms to match the transformation of the weapon. This way, even though each of our weapons are placed in different position here, because they're all invisible, right? But if we make them visible, they're placed a little bit differently. We can see the location here, for example, for the shotgun and the double shotgun. You see they're all of them are in different positions, so that you can adjust them. And to have our arms to match the location of our arms with the weapon, we have this part. And then we set the visibility for the weapon to visible, so our weapon becomes visible, and we play the animation for the weapon and the arms. This is the unholstering animation. So we don't need to add the UI for the arms, for the fists and the hammer, but the rest of the weapons we add UI to the viewport. The sequence is doesn't really matter. Okay, Next, the delay that covers the animation, and then we set weapon will fire to 1 after that. Now after that we have few differences. Mainly our minigun, as I've already noticed, changes the size of our capsule collision component. And for most of the weapons we have a check for automatic reload, and this checks if the automatic reload is set to 1, and if it is, it also checks if we have 0 ammo in the clip, and if it is so and the automatic reload is set to 1, then we go to the reload logic for the weapon. Only for the double shotgun this happens regardless the automatic reload option, because we're not considering the chambers of the shotgun as a clip. And so next and previous weapons logic. So we have this event. Here we have dedicated keys that call to these events. So when the event is called, we switch on integer, and based on our weapon selected +1, we are calling, because we are selecting next weapon, right? So if we had, for example, fists, this means that the weapon selected variable is set to 0. So when we press next weapon, we add 1 to the currently selected weapon index, and we get 1, which is the hammer. Now, if we don't have the hammer in the inventory, it goes down and checks the rest of the weapons. So if we don't have the hammer, it will jump to pistol. If we don't have the pistol, it'll jump to shotgun. Also, it will jump over if we don't have any ammo in the clip or in the backpack for the pistol. So this excludes the weapons that don't have any ammo from the cycle of next weapon. Everything here is the same except for the bazooka. And here we have an additional condition which takes into account the bazooka exclusion option. And here we need to satisfy the condition and to go to the bazooka during the next weapon cycle. We need this. We need that the bazooka exclusion is set to 0, right? And also there is another condition here. We only want to exclude the bazooka from the automatic weapon changing, not when we are doing this by input. So this here, like I've already talked about custom inputs. Here we can add these new parameters, and we have auto switch added, a simple boolean which is checked or not checked. So here when we press the key for the next weapon or the previous weapon, we're not doing the automatic switch, it's our regular switching, and we hit and so this is not checked. However, here in this logic, for example for the pistol and for the rest of the weapons, it's the same. When we have automatic switch on, when we go to the next weapon, here you can see that auto switch is checked. Basically this means 1. Not checked, it means 0. And this is why I generally prefer integers, because that thing is basically 0 and 1. However, in this case it is easier to just to check on the event, just to click on the event instead of setting a number there, so I used a boolean here. So basically checked means 1, not checked means 0. So here, if we get 1, this means automatic reload. So if we are doing the automatic reload and the bazooka exclusion is also set to 1, this will return 1 multiplied by 1. This will be 1, and this is not 0. So in this case, we will not go to the bazooka and exclude it from the logic. Now in case we are doing the automatic reload, which means this is 1, but the bazooka exclusion is set to 0, and our multiplication will return 0, and in this case we still can go to the bazooka selection. And same thing if we have the bazooka exclusion set to 1, but we are not doing the automatic weapon change, and we are doing this by input, this will again return, the multiplication of them will return 0 to us. And we will go to bazooka selection logic. Okay, now the other thing that we need to take a look is that the fists are assigned to 8, because if we go from the bazooka, which is 7, 7 plus 1 will be 8, so our first weapon becomes last weapon plus 1 here in this logic. And in the previous weapon, everything is the same, only as you can see, we go up the logic. So if for example we have currently let's say we have minigun selected, and this is 5, and from minigun going backwards, that'll be 4 minus 1, right? And we will get by 4, we will get here to this branch, which is double shotgun. And if we don't have any ammo for the shotgun, or we don't have it in our inventory, we will go backwards to the shotgun. So everything is the same, except obviously our last weapon, which is the bazooka, becomes -1. So that when we have, because when we have fists selected, our weapon selected is 0. So when we are doing previous weapon, we subtract 1. This means -1. So from this value, we should go to the bazooka. So when you add, for example, a new weapon, you will bring this here to 7, and the newly added weapon that will be associated with 8 will become here -1, and here 8 will go to the new weapon, and 9 will go to the fists. We will review this whole thing again during the creation of the new weapon and its integration in the system.